Welcome. We are here. Very lucky to be with Yehudis Fletcher from the UK, who's always wanted to learn in Kollel, but instead she's undertaking a master's degree in religion and theology at the University of Manchester. She held a research fellowship at the University of Kent's AHRC funded Abuse in Religious Setting project, which is soon to publish its findings, so look out for that. Yehudis is also a co-founder of Nahamu, a think tank that counters extremism in the Jewish community. She's an author, a scholar, and an activist within her Haredi community. Her memoir, Chutzpah, will be published by Penguin in May 2025. I hope it's volume one, because many, many more things to be happening and coming. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. I am excited. I think we've communicated a couple of times online, so this is fun to get stuck in. And maybe we can start by, I know that you talk quite a bit about polemics and they
Mhm.
like crossing the divide, and maybe we can start by mentioning, you sent me an article and I
Mhm.
responded to it by saying, I want to talk about this, but actually I think we should talk about this in a gentle way, and maybe messaging about it
Mhm.
is going to um, decrease the amount to which we can see each other. So I think like just introducing this conversation with we probably have a lot of stuff that we don't agree on, and I'm challenging you about something that you've written, but saying I disagree with you on some things, and yet anyway, I'm here to talk because I want to connect and I want us to understand each other. So that's
Yeah, thank you for that. So many times, whatever social media platform it is, it just doesn't have the capacity to fully catch a scope of a conversation. So let's just fill in the audience on the topic, the burning issue of the day, and that is lollipops in synagogues. So the article I wrote was about the fact that I go to synagogue with my daughters, and most often, in fact, every single time, there's a candy man in the shul, which is, in my opinion, a beautiful thing. It makes kids happy to come to shul. It gives them something sweet. It gives the parents some quiet. It's a beautiful thing. But at the same time, you go and you look, and the candy man, as is implied by the name, is a man, and the Orthodox synagogue is divided by a mechitza, by a barrier. So just to clarify, uh, the mechitza is usually for once girls are a bit older. So my daughters are not the age where they're yet fully on the women's side. But either way, it would be nice, in my opinion, this is what I wrote, that there be also a woman on in the women's section with candy, so that otherwise the current situation is all the girls need to come to the men's section to get candy, and there's no and there's various reasons for you can check it out in the article, but that's the basic idea and the premise, and you wanted to take a different perspective, so I'd love to hear that.
Yeah. Okay, so I should start by saying I actually think it's a nice idea. Like in as the status quo that you describe, the girls are in one section without what we would call sweets, and the boys are downstairs and they do get sweets. Like from my perspective, yes, the kids should both have that sweetness. It's a really kind of Jewish concept when boys turn three, and we initiate.
Yes.
So when boys are 3 years old, we initiate them into the sweetness of Torah, right? We, depending on what part of the community you come from, that might look different. But when my little boys were three, we took them to my husband's Mora Derech, and he had this plastic page with the Aleph base on, and he put honey on it, and the kids licked it. And obviously, that's a sanitary question, but that's that's the way things were done. I feel like it was a wipe clean situation. Um, and yeah, that is that is something that we do for boys, and you're right that we don't do it for girls. I think what made me feel uncomfortable about the suggestion is that it feels like you drew attention to the problem quite rightly, but the next steps are just not there. Like, what happens if we initiate girls into the sweetness of Torah, either with honey on an aleph-based sheet or with candy upstairs in shul, and then they face a brick wall when they turn 12. Right. So I was at shul this past weekend. My friend, a very close friend of mine's son was bar mitzvah, and I have a complicated relationship with going to shul. My
We
father
all
is
do.
my father is a pulpit rabbi, so I
Uh-huh.
actually grew up going to shul most weekends, and then as an adult. So kind of the shul for me, as opposed to other girls, I think I felt more comfortable in a shul than other girls
Mhm.
my age necessarily did because my father was the rav and
Mhm.
I knew where the sweets were kept.
Mhm.
Um, and I talk about this in my memoir that's coming out soon about how I did go downstairs, even though it wasn't really my space. But when my father was there, and he was there during the week, and he kind of, he had some jobs to do or whatever,
So
I would
going
go
to
down.
your father's office.
Well, not just my father's office. I used to go into the shul itself, and I
Mhm.
used to love going up to touching the paruchas, touching the Aron Kodesh,
Mhm.
and um, I think people thought I was playing, but I was praying, right?
Wow.
I loved being in that space. And the way some shawls are constructed is with a gallery where you can actually, the women can, if you've got a beautiful big Aron Kodesh and the women are a
Mhm.
gallery, there is that kind of sense that I had of being quite close to the Aron Kodesh itself, even if I couldn't participate.
Mhm.
Um, but then you go into other shawls where women are behind a grill or behind in a separate room sometimes, and I could feel very, very distant. Anyway, there's all sorts of reasons why shawl is a complicated space for me now. But this past Shabbos, I had a bar mitzvah to go to, and I went to quite a standard, you would consider it modern Orthodox, middle of the road shul. And because it was a bar mitzvah, there were a lot of kids there. So they had a very engaging rabbi, and so somebody was doing the laning, and between each part of the laning, um, they had this rabbi, and he was saying to the kids, "I'm going to ask you questions about the next bit. So follow on, point on." And then as they got to each next aliyah, they stopped, and besides doing the aliyah, they also asked, like they quizzed the kids, and whoever got the right answers got candy, as you say. And there's a lot of aliyahs, right? This
Mhm.
happens again and again throughout. The boys put up their hands and the girls put up their hands, right? There's
Mhm.
a gallery. The girls can see what's going on. There is that, but like the visual picture is full, even if you're not allowed to
Mhm.
participate or not meant to participate. But that didn't stop the girls from putting their hands. Somebody's asking a question. They followed along. They knew the answer. It didn't stop them putting up their hands. And they
Mhm.
never got called on because they were never going to. Nobody was ever going to ask them to answer the question, and it didn't stop them offering. And that sweetness and that desire and that openness for the experience of shul, the girls have it. What we do is we take it away from them. We stymie that participation. It's not even about getting them engaged. These girls were engaged. They wanted to be there. And one of the grandma of the bar mitzvah boy, I think she's probably even more strident than I am. And she actually called down into shul. She called down to the rabbi and she said, "Look at the girls with their hands up." And he completely ignored her.
Mhm.
It was a really uncomfortable experience.
Yeah, it's interesting. I gave a talk this past summer about a series about women who changed Jewish history. So one of those was Sarah Schenirer, and it's interesting to see the dissonance between the way she's portrayed in places like Bais Yaakov and the reality. And so one of the things was that she had an empire, I think, of 20 something thousand students, branches all over, and it was already up and running. And so at that point there were some rabbis who disagreed with her, but they couldn't do anything because she had such, everyone had their daughter in her schools, and she just had, and so a lot of the sentiments that you're expressing are actually relatable to the genuine Sarah Schenirer, not the one that they teach in Bais Yaakov, which is, yeah, she had many of these same frustrations, and like she told the men, the fathers whose daughters were in gymnasiums and whatever, and leaving their home on Shabbos, she said, "What do you expect? You don't let them learn. You don't let them read. There they can get a first class education, and you want them to stay at home where you can't even give them like you're saying to even answer questions about the parsha. It's yeah, yeah. But just to sort of go back to the shul structure, you're right. Look, it's not a easy situation, and a lot of these things vary, as you say, modern Orthodox. There's Haredi. There's really all kinds of levels. But the interesting thing that I was saying is that whether you're very progressive or you're very Haredi, everyone should agree that there should be candy for the girls in the women's section. That should be like a matter of consensus, no?
Yeah, no, I like on that point, I'm not disagreeing with that. I think I have like the discomfort where I feel it is like it's right
Hmm.
here
Hmm.
is this idea. I don't know if you've ever read Martin Luther King's letter from a Birmingham jail.
You'll forgive me. I grew up in Israel, so no.
Okay. Um, I also spent a good portion of my childhood in Israel. We can have another chat about
Hmm.
that. It's a great letter. And in that letter, he talks about the white moderates timetable for another man's freedom.
Hmm.
And to me, that's such a powerful sentiment where he talks about, some people feel a sense of urgency because they're being oppressed, whether
Hmm.
that's Black people experiencing slavery or I'm
Hmm.
talking about sex-based oppression.
Hmm.
And when the solutions that come very well-meaningly, I have no
Hmm.
doubt that you come with um like no malice whatsoever. You're suggesting something just nice. Like why can't the girls
Wait, wait,
have
wait, wait.
this?
Just a minute. Just to clarify, my
Yeah.
motivation is very simple. It's not a intellectual or social, whatever. I'm in shul with my daughters, and I don't want them to have to run to these strange men for candy. It's
Yeah.
like
Yeah,
yeah,
no, and
that's
thank you for clarifying that. But what I'm saying is in that response is also an acceptance of the status quo. And that's why I talk
Mhm.
about, the white moderates timetable for another man's freedom. Like to me, you're acknowledging that there's a problem. For you, you can see the inequality. You can see because it's your daughter's inequality. Your daughters are in this bind, and it's so
They're
immediate
not
for
in
you.
bind. This is a completely selfishly driven thing. They're fine with going to any man in shul because, like, whatever, I'm there with them. My daughter's 4, but
Mhm.
yeah, look, it's a situation that, as looking into the future, looking into what I want them to see, having to go to these, older men for candy is just a very, you want them to have women role models. You want them to have yeah, look, that's the idea. But does that mean that now is my calling to change all the structure of Orthodox schools? Probably not.
Right, exactly. So what made me feel uncomfortable is that um that you drew the line for me very, very early. And
Hmm.
and I think that like the way I see it, it became apparent to you that there is some kind of problem, however small and however quick the fix that you suggested is.
Hmm.
But that problem to me is not just a small problem, it's a kind of a window into a much wider, bigger issue. And to me, it's a kind of quite painful to hear the solution stopping there.
Can I just sort of pass the ball into your court? So
Yeah.
what is this solution in your opinion?
Well, I think we can talk about different ways of running an egalitarian shul, right? So there's all sorts of models for that, and some of that is just straight up egalitarianism, where women participate in different ways, and that would be
Hmm.
outside the halachic framework. So there's partnership minyanim, which run according to Rav Henkin's psak, and lots of other authorities on that. But besides for that, like if we go back to the way um, the the like take it away from the politics. There's a lot of politics, and when we talk about
Hmm.
institutions, the Rambam warns us against holding up our institutions as
Hmm.
gods, as some kind of avodah zarah. Um, Sometimes the objection against women's participation in it is about what the remind me the phrase that is used.
You know
You
what?
don't know. Right, right. There's a
I don't
phrase.
know if maybe you know what? I'd hate to give her a shout out here because I don't know if she wants everyone to know she's my first cousin.
Yeah,
But my first cousin is very, very informed on these issues. My aunt
yeah.
has been early, advocate for some of these issues. But it's not something that I have
Okay,
a
it's
knowledge
come
of.
to me. The phrase is kvod hatzibur, right? The reason we don't have women's participation in shul like embedded in halacha is because it goes against the kvod hatzibur because the men
Hmm.
don't it would be against their egos basically. And that's a halachic principle. And I'm not arguing with the halachic principle framework. I'm saying that there are within the halachic matrix there are ways to address that. And one of those for men to fagin in Yiddish is to
You know what? There's no translation. I have a whole article about this. There's no translation for fargin. In
okay.
fact, in modern Hebrew, it's lefargen, but there's no translation whatsoever to fargin. But I'll just for the audience, I'll say what it is. It's just to basically sort of be happy for someone else to have something good, to kind of show goodwill and want someone else to have something.
Right, there you
Just like
go.
there's no word for krecht.
Right. So, but put that all aside, right? If we
Hmm.
look at more at like the broader picture and we look at women's, so if we put for me, if we put the institutions aside, put the
Hmm.
buildings aside, put the incorporated charities and I don't know what they call them in America, but the financial
Five,
institutions
501
aside.
or
But that's it.
nonprofits. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Put those aside and just think about the people in the room. And if you take it back to, right, children, how do we teach
Hmm.
boys and how do we teach girls?
Hmm.
And how do we connect them to Yiddishkeit and Torah? For girls, when in the UK particularly, even right across into the modern Orthodox schools, the boys learn
Hmm.
Mishnah and the girls don't. And if the girls do learn Mishnah, they only learn Pirkei Avos.
I'm thinking about what you're saying now, and so much of it, it's not a subject I studied in depth, but what I did study because I gave a talk on this is the topic of Sarah Schenirer, where which by the way, not to brag again about family, but supposedly my family was from Radin. They were very close with the Chafetz Chaim, and my great grandmother, her name was Peshachaya Sapir. Her father was the Rabbi of Saratov, and there was no girls' school. And she, because she grew up in the rabbi's house, she was the daughter of the rabbi. She heard her brothers learn Gemara all day, so she learned how to learn Gemara, and she would tutor children in Gemara. Now, there's exaggerated legends about her Talmudic scholarship, but it was pretty decent. And supposedly, when they asked the Chafetz Chaim if to build these schools for girls, he said, "Why not? They can come out as both knowledgeable and as pious as this woman, Peshachaya Sapir, who's my great grandmother." But I think a lot of this debate goes back to the Sarah Schenirer question, meaning you look at women's education, and the question is, what are we doing? Is it right to just say call the whole system off? Are these changes in the system appropriate? Does it need to come from the house? Does it need to come from the community? And I think that what's fascinating today is that many of the schools that call themselves Bais Yaakov are actually an anathema to what Sarah Schenirer taught because you have like I'm not going to name Hasidic sections, but you have certain Hasidic sections that name their schools Beis Yaakov, and then make sure that the girls don't know how to read anything beyond the very most basic. And so right, so they shouldn't be a Beis Yaakov. The Beis Yaakovs that were in Poland were extremely educating, and they had gym and they had play and drama and whatever. And so the question goes back really to the sort of what happened in Poland, in the 19 teens and 1920s and 1930s, where there was this grappling with how to approach Jewish women's education. So I think it goes back to that, and so when I hear what you're saying, I'm just sort of like, why don't we
Yeah,
explore what was done?
yes. So first of all, looking back at what was done sort of pre-war, but also for me, it's about looking at the post-Holocaust. With Nahamu, what we look at is extremism within the Jewish community,
Yeah.
and there is this trope that the way we
Hmm.
do things now, particularly in the Haredi community, is how we've done it for centuries and
Oh, it's a
centuries.
scam. It's one of the biggest
Nicht
scams out there.
nicht
You know,
gezogen, nicht gepflogen.
it's the biggest scam.
Um,
My biggest proof that it's not true is that I believe, I may be wrong, that in Hungary and Poland no one drove a Tesla, and you go now to Muncie and Kiryas, it's the only car to be seen. But yeah, it's in the actually in the Israeli context, it's even more. I hate to use the word, but it's repugnant because the Haredi Israeli sort of personality that emerged is has very little to do with what went on in Europe. And so sort of the claim that like we are the authentic yeah, it's kind of ridiculous.
so here we are. Like we've actually found a lot of things that we agree on. I think for me, it's really important, like you said, where does the change come? I'm not here to burn down the house.
Hmm.
Lehefach, but completely on the opposite. For me, it's about the preservation of my community.
Hmm.
And at the moment, we have a situation where, on one hand, we have a specific, very narrow way of life that is upheld as
Hmm.
Messiah when we would both agree that it is not Messiah. And on the other hand, we have a situation where people who don't like it are encouraged to leave,
Hmm.
pretty much
Yeah, look,
explicitly.
if I can just give a context for that, it starts in the 1980s. So in the 1980s, for the first time in 180 years, Orthodoxy is no longer threatened. It's for the first time for 180 years, Orthodoxy is rightfully in existential crisis mode. You have emancipation, you have the Enlightenment, and Orthodoxy is like, and it was almost completely destroyed and decimated, and so it went into like complete defensive mode and like and did many things in response. 1980s came, and for the first time, the bell curve is shifting outward, and Haredi Orthodoxy, whatever you want to call it, is not threatened. It's to the contrary, it's expanding and it's growing and it's growing and it's growing. And I don't think we came to deal with, but it still operates as a persecuted minority. And it comes up most in the issue of enlisting to the army in Israel, where it's like, oh my gosh, after the Holocaust, you can't send guys from yeshiva to the army because we only have 10 guys who can read Gemara. What are we going to do? But we're at a situation where you have 100,000 guys sitting full time and learning, and they're still in their brains, they are the persecuted 10 people. So we
Right. And
never
then
grappled with that.
and then we come back to this situation of people who definitely should not be sitting and learning because
Yes, of course.
it's not good for them. They can't earn a living,
Hmm.
and not only can they not earn a living, they would be of benefit
Yeah.
to the community and to society if they were doing something that suited them better. But I want to we need to finish, but I just want
Okay.
to come back to the one point that when we create this world in which boys have access to shul, boys have access to learning and Torah
Hmm.
through that. But not just Torah and Yiddishkeit. They have access to the institutions, right?
Hmm.
They're the ones who know how to get things done, right? I have a 16-year-old boy, and he can lane and he can daven and he can lead
Hmm.
and he can do all these things because he's encouraged to, because he goes to the young boys minyan where they teach them how to do these things.
Hmm.
When we have that situation on one hand, and that's
Hmm.
upheld right from the beginning of this conversation with the Candyman who's downstairs,
Hmm.
and we have girls who don't have access to that, and girls who are restricted in not just because they don't have the skills, but they're dafka gate kept from being able to learn.
Hmm.
Um, I actually made myself a t-shirt that says Lamadity Tiflis, and the L of Lamadity is made to look like the A of Art Scroll.
Oh.
Um, when we do that, we create a situation where the girls need to seek permission and answers from boys as to what constitutes the right thing to do. What is Torah? They don't have
Yeah.
access to those answers themselves because they're disempowered to begin with, and I think it's by design.
Hmm.
Al titash Torah semecha, we actually have to have the Torah to begin with. We need access to it. Um, and I think what we're constructing today is anti-Jewish and anti-Torah.
I'd love to have a conversation another time about I do think a lot of this comes from just the fact that we operate, like I said, as if we're like in some horrible crisis of nearly disappearing. But in fact, we really need to grapple with the the challenges and the adjustments that are needed for a situation where the Orthodox community is in fact very large, and though there's burdens and responsibilities that need to be addressed. Obviously, in the case of Israel, if your children and grandchildren are gonna be the majority of Israel, that entails some responsibilities. But yeah, I hear you, and these are very good and important points. And hopefully another time. Thank you so much.
Sure. All right. Take
All right.
care.
Thanks a lot.
Bye
Thanks.
bye.
Bye.